good afternoon or good morning, everyone. And welcome to, don't worry, it's not a virus. Welcome to another lesson on Germany between the two wars. Now, as for the last time, I would like to ask you to watch the video and or read the transcript. In this case, the transcript will also contain some images from a textbook that might help you to answer the question, and will also include, as always, some videos and possibly some articles. Now, the final question of today is, what methods did the Nazis use to control Germany? Now, in the last lesson, we looked at the structural problems of the Weimar Republic and how they made it easy for people like Adolf Hitler to obtain absolute power. Today, we're looking at what happened next, at how the Nazi Party was able to establish full control over German society to change it to a completely unprecedented and unexpected extent. Now, to do that, we will be looking at these 4 points. First of all, Joseph Goebbels, we'll see who that guy is. 2, Nazi rallies. 3, censorship and propaganda. And 4, the police state. And here is a sketch of Adolf Hitler with his iconic mustache. Now, Joseph Goebbels. Now, even before Hitler had reached power in 1933, he had appointed a certain Dr. Joseph Goebbels as the responsible for managing the party's propaganda. If you think about it, it's actually quite significant that right from the start, Hitler and his followers perfectly understood the importance of telling people what to think. It was a very modern thing to do. They established a full-on Ministry of Propaganda in 1934 and started working to make the Germans believe that they were living in the best possible world, one in which Germany was ruled by the Nazi Party. This was, of course, the point of view of the Nazis. Now, Goebbels was what we would call an evil genius, okay? He was a man who clearly possessed an extraordinary competence in what he did. And throughout his career, which lasted until the very last moments of Nazism, he was able to make the Germans believe pretty much everything he told them. And his twisted gift for propaganda became particularly apparent during the last terrible months of the Second World War between 1944 and 45. So, how did this evil genius and his assistants turn the Republic of Weimar into a Nazi totalitarian hellscape? And if this was an actual YouTube channel, there would be an intro segment here. But still, first point, Nazi rallies. The most spectacular way the Nazis tried to control the German public was through huge political rallies, okay? Those were gigantic gatherings of thousands and thousands of people in military uniforms, shouting slogans, saluting Hitler as the savior of the country, while all marching in unison like trained soldier. All this in the middle of very elaborate temporary monuments that were set up to provide an awe-inspiring scenery, okay, to increase the idea that, yeah, the Nazis are good and they are bringing order to Germany. Now, these rallies showed to the unconvinced that the majority of the German population was on the Nazi side. And it also showed them that after the chaos that had characterized the years of the Weimar Republic, remember, with people shooting each other and the government being unable to do pretty much anything, the Nazis finally came and restored order. It was, of course, a show, a propaganda show. As an extra point, the appearances of Hitler in these very elaborate and solemn rituals made him appear like a divinely appointed figure who had been chosen by God to save the country. Yes, he started to look as he was the sacred emperor of Germany rather than another elected politician. And that is a very important difference. If you want to see for yourself how these rallies looked and how they worked, there are a couple of videos in the online resources section. However, despite the spectacle provided by the rallies, and here we are moving to the second point, which is censorship and propaganda. Despite the spectacle provided by the rallies, the most effective and thorough way the Nazis were able to control the population was through a very careful and savvy use of the most modern means of propaganda. Okay, Before we get further into this, what is propaganda? It's the spreading of information, more often than not biased and misleading, used to spread a certain point of view. It's a message that primarily serves the interests of those who send the message. Okay? And how did the Nazis use propaganda? First of all, they controlled the media. If you remember, the Weimar Republic supported full freedom of expression. Too much, according to many conservatives, including the Nazis themselves at the time. This changed radically after the Nazis took control, and thanks to the power granted to them by Article 48. Remember, we talked about it last time. Article 48 was the article that granted them the right to pass laws without going through Parliament. Okay? So, thanks to these new powers, the Nazis established a very severe system of censorship by which all ideas and messages that were not approved by the government were banned. Okay? Another important thing was Goebbels' own passion for media and technology, which made him realize the potential for the most modern media at the time. For example, newspapers, cinema, and especially radio. Now, newspapers were relatively old and easy to control. Newspapers actually go way, way back, but they started being massively produced only in the 20th century. So yes, they were relatively old, but about 50, 60 years old, okay? And after all, Goebbels himself used to be a journalism and knew the system from the inside, so he knew how to move in order to control newspapers. First of all, he banned all the Jewish newspaper editors and journalists, okay? So if you were Jewish, you could not work in a newspaper. Then he implemented a very strong system of censorship and control. Newspapers could only publish articles approved by the Nazi government. Cinema was also another important technology at the time. Newsreels were, of course, full of Nazi propaganda, and they fell under the control of the regime. So if there was like the same way we have the news on television today, at the time they had news at the cinema. And of course, news was under the control of the government. But it was not just news, okay? Also, normal films like comedies, thrillers, romantic movies, they all had to carry an explicit pro-Nazi message or a message that was approved by the regime. For example, the heroes needed to be Aryan, which is how the Germans saw themselves as this special, the Nazis, not all the Germans, of course. The Nazis saw themselves as this special race, superior race, while the bad guys were often Jewish or communists, okay, or possibly French. Finally, the new media of the day, the YouTube of the 1930s, was the radio. Okay, it was the new big thing, the thing that everyone was looking to join and to take advantage from. Okay. YouTube would be a good example because YouTube has like 10 years, it's more or less 10 years old, has existed for a while, and is taking traction just now. The same was true for radio. Radios had existed, I think, still, don't remember the date, but early 1900s. It took them 30 years before they were actually mass-produced and available to everyone, okay? They were a very new and very effective way to get into the houses of all Germans. Before then, people decided which newspaper to buy. Before then, people decided to get out of the house and go to the cinema. After the radio, it was the propaganda that was broadcast directly in your house. Huge change, okay? The government, to take full advantage of that, made them cheaper so that more people would buy them. And of course, radios would always broadcast Nazi propaganda. So it was amending the transcript. Again, it was all this very explicit and savvy use of new media was a small revolution in communication. Okay, Goebbels' modern style and his ability to reduce complex issues into a series of simple slogans, like Germany is going through an unprecedented economic crisis. What did it do wrong? We did nothing wrong. It was the Jews, or well, things like that. I cannot think of another example, but generally it was reducing complex issues to very simple sound bites that generally blamed someone else. Okay? And this system allowed him to sway most of the country's population, okay, to bring them to his side, to the Nazi side. But what if you disagreed? Well, you couldn't. It was not allowed by law. It was not allowed to disagree with the Nazi Party, because the Nazi Party claimed to know and represent the best interest of the German nation. And if you disagreed with them publicly, then you disagreed with the German nation, and you were therefore a traitor that should be punished. But what if you disagreed in the comfort of your home? Well, even then, the Gestapo, the Nazi secret police, had a very wide espionage network, a very wide network of informant. They had eyes and ears everywhere, and they could arrest people without a warrant and send them to concentration camps without a trial. Just storm inside your house, pick you up, and send you back into a concentration camp. Not the best thing. Now, the reliance on police forces to suppress political dissent, like people with different ideas, is what is generally known as a police state. And while the Nazis weren't the only ones using it, they certainly mastered the system. So, to sum it up, the Nazis used three methods to control Germany. First, they used spectacular political rallies that stunned everyone with their elaborate and epic ceremonial. Second, they used censorship and propaganda to sway the undecided and silence the dissenting voices. And three, they had a police state that was able to imprison and kill more or less whoever dared to disagree. Now, you should have enough elements to answer the questions, and of course you might find more information in the online resources in the transcript. Let me know if you have any questions, and see you next time.